All right. Welcome, Vaishnavi. Tell us about yourself. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Vaishnavi Varma, and I'm the founder of khaa-lo, which is a platform connecting small creators and small brands. We focus on making collaboration seamless, particularly UGC collaborations, and providing small businesses a platform. Some of the things that we are looking into currently is how we can optimize UGC in the changing landscape of discoverability. And a little bit of background about me is that I studied physics from Syracuse University, and my career actually started off with machine learning. I interned at Bank of America, and then I worked there full time as a vulnerability manager or in vulnerability management. And so I've always been kind of around machine learning, particularly sentiment analysis, where one of my projects senior year was to build an app where you can analyze the sentiment um, or the emotions that you had after scrolling on social media. So khaa-lo really is a buildup on a lot of different college projects. But yeah, I'm so excited to be here today.
Wow, that's awesome. I love it when
Thank
what you
you.
actually studied is useful in what you're doing, because a lot of us, we're still figuring all of that out. So that's awesome. And you talked about UGC content, and I think we're all trying to figure out UGC content, and
hmm
then you add AI to it. So tell us more about that. Like, how is AI changing the way that we discover products and solutions, and how does UGC play into that?
Right, right. So one of the things that I want to begin with is use my own very real life example that kind of sparked this idea for me. So I think it was about 2 years ago, I want to say, and again, I've always been kind of around machine learning in some capacity, even if it isn't like so much on the consumer side, but always on the data side. But just like going back to this, I was looking for a service. Like I think I was looking for apartments in New York City. My lease was going to be up. And if anyone who has lived in New York City and especially, you know, move in the summer, they know how incredibly street is one of the that you guys have that too service that people tend to use, but everything was gone. I just like could not find what I wanted. So I actually ended up turning to Chat GPT, where I was like, I am looking for an apartment in this area, in this budget, and these are my requirements. Can you suggest me something? And actually, through that, I was able to get some recommendations. So that's kind of when like it sparked my curiosity. I did understand the basics of like how the recommendation system worked, how the LLMs were recommending me these spots. But I think like that really forced me to look more into it. And then the next one that I was kind of using was I asked what software should I use to record a podcast. And so just like through my own experiences, I started digging more into it. And I came across this very interesting study from Stanford, and it is by Professor Yuyan Wang, and it's about how traditional recommendation systems are changing. That's because um, a lot more, I want to say, especially like in retail and e-commerce. So, we have machine learning and then we have AI. And the difference between machine learning and AI is that machine learning is more like based on certain inputs, this is going to be the output, versus AI is obviously mimicking human intelligence. So, as AI is being used more, there is more context-based decisions. Um, So just like when you're looking into UGC, like especially like even for us, like this is like something we start, building on, that maybe like there is good sentiment around a certain product, how we are being viewed on social media. So like these are some of the building blocks.
That's fascinating. That is extremely fascinating. So, and I like that you broke down machine learning and AI, and they can work together, but AI is trying to be more advanced and think
Yes.
and decide without all those inputs. So that's really interesting. What do most founders misunderstand about how AI decides what to surface and what gets ignored?
That is actually a really great question. And I think like so far from my conversation with founders in I want to say like the food and beverage industry, again, like small brands, like these are our clients, these are the people that we work with. And also I want to preface this that a lot of the times they're not very technical. Again, I come from a technical background, so I think sometimes take it for granted that people would know this, but it is basically that you need to be very consistent in the image that you are building for yourself. Because again, I'm gonna go back to the study that I mentioned, where the study itself, it's a long name, but it is called Beyond Black Box Theory Structuring Multi-Stage recommender systems using predicted intents. And just like to, clarify what like really I'm kind of like touching on is again that, for example, like before when we just had machine learning, someone saw that, okay, she like, Vaishnavi studies at Syracuse University. So she's gonna buy a North Face jacket. So that is like, the input that I did that, okay, I live in Syracuse, like my shipping address is in Syracuse. So, okay, I would buy a North Face jacket. But now with AI tools available, there is a lot more context and awareness around, these machine models. So it could be that, okay, Vaishnavi is getting this shipped in Syracuse, so North Face is a great recommendation. But actually, Vaishnavi grew up in Abu Dhabi. This is where her home is, where it is summer all year round. So maybe North Face isn't the best option. Instead, we're going to recommend her something like Abercrombie and Fitch that has options for summer dresses, summer outfits and so on. So this is just like a very like basic example because I don't want to get too much in the technical, how this is how LLM is picking this and that, but like this is kind of an analogy of how there are going to be recommendation systems in the future. Um, Obviously, I think there are still going to be a lot of tactics that, founders can continue following, that are good for SEO, that are going to still be relevant with AI because it does use a lot of textual metadata. So I think like to have it AI readable. Again, these tactics still are great, but also start thinking about like this machine, this model understands the context of things. So really like, I think a lot of founders aren't exactly focusing on that, especially like, when they are trying to define their target audience. But once they start doing that, I think it's going to open up a whole new level of brand awareness.
Oh, fascinating. So if a founder is thinking about, okay, I'm going to be investing in UGC content, I really want to go as viral as I can go. What are some things, like if you could say three, four, five things that they need to pay attention to so that what the content they're pushing out there is AI readable?
Mhm. So I'm actually gonna pick off on something that I mentioned earlier in our conversation just now, from the last question, textual metadata. So keeping it again, like this all goes back to context. Like now your machine is able to understand this context that human intelligence only previously could. So I think like that is a very new concept. So starting off with textual metadata. So maybe again, I'm gonna go back to social media because that is what is like very heavy with us. Captions, comments, and hashtags. So I think these things are just a few of them that we recommend, the brands and creators that we work with that, be very mindful of and to shape your brand strategy, your brand story. Use this, like get specific. Utilize ChatGPT. Like this is something, I did to grow our Instagram too, was I asked ChatGPT and I was like, these are our topics. Can you give me 30 relevant keywords for this that like I consistently use to like help the algorithm on whatever platform that I am understand, like this is what our brand is doing. This is our target audience. So that's one of them. Another thing that I think is incredibly important is being clear and having context again when we are, like building our brands. And again, I think I want to say I try to test out ChatGPT and Claude and see, like what is working better. And I think for more specificity, I kind of tend to prefer Claude a little bit more, based on its answers. I do think ChatGPT can be a little bit vague. Again, like this also depends on your prompt engineering. I just think like, the way mine is, Claude tends to give me more specific answers. So when I say use clear language and context, again, going back to social media, like using my own example, instead of saying, oh, I'm doing a clothing haul, instead be like, oh, today I'm going to do a clothing haul from the sample sale in New York City, and these were the brands. And so when you're this descriptive, then it allows the AI, the LLMs to pick up certain keywords, and bonus points if you add subtitles, again, like more keywords, a very clear and concise caption. So that's like the second thing that I would recommend using. And then the third thing I think is so key, and I this is also I think something that I feel like a lot of the times founders don't understand, especially like I think founders that are my clients in my industry, like creators and brands, but it is basically making sure that your content is publicly accessible. So a lot of the times, people want to work with brands or influencers, and influencers especially tend to like, unless you're going to pay them for a post, if you just send them a PR, they usually just do stories. And stories aren't publicly accessible, so anything you need to log in to watch, they're not publicly accessible. So really like, and I think this has been the culture, like previously, I want to say like 2016, 2017, this was a great way to, you know, um, get discoverability. And it is still true to some extent. I don't want to like completely diminish it, but just like speaking of in terms of like what is happening now and like what we're seeing with social media today, there is a shift. Like it doesn't, like especially on TikTok, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. You could still get like over 1 million views. You could still like, like get a lot of engagement. So yeah, like that is kind of like what I'm building on in terms of like having things be publicly accessible. So like having content that is on Reddit, on YouTube, that is easily readable, someone or like, the LLM can easily access. Then we have having a more structured format. The example I'm going to go back to again is, like going to doing a haul from, sample sale in New York City. Then the AI can pick up that, okay, New York City, sample sale, so sample sale, and then you can add, to be more specific, you can add something like, oh, my purchase is under $50. Then that way it can understand that, okay, this is the audience, target audience, like this is like the maybe like the socioeconomic background of the audience that they're trying to reach. So that is the fourth one. And then the last one that I think is incredibly important, and I think a lot of bigger brands are also doing, is engagement signals. So that means, and I'm gonna reference again, going back to, how followers, like, I mean, first of all, you can also buy followers these days. So, it can be very confusing, but also it is possible that someone who has a lot of followers is maybe not getting enough comments and all of that, or not getting enough DMs, because a lot of business transactions these days don't happen through comments and likes, but rather in DMs. So a lot of the times when brands tend to work with you, they'll ask you for your engagement rate. So like if you're a creator, and you'll have to show that, okay, like if I post a video, like I'm not just getting a million views, but like, like a certain amount of comments, a certain amount of like lead generations, I would say, because I think even comments, like, you could get comments but then not get lead generation. So that is like one of the things. And I think that is so important because brands are asking this question, but LLMs, I think, especially I want to say Perplexity, which is, a little bit more academic, more specific, that looks into it a lot more too.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, that was a lot of information.
So much to think about. And I really like that you're going into these details because we often think that, oh, social media, anything can happen. And there's truth to it. But some
Mhm.
things are actually engineered.
They
So
are.
we can learn these lessons and help our products to be more
Yes.
discoverable. And just thinking about that, I think a lot of founders are hoping and praying that they'll get UGC content. Um, do you have types of UGC content that you would recommend that they just invest in? Like you can pay or whatever it is, but are there types of UGC content that it makes sense and it's actually I don't know, like it makes sense. Like it just
Right.
makes sense for your business for you to invest in this type of UGC content.
Yeah, yeah, I think, and this is something that we are doing with khaa-lo. We're also building with khaa-lo, but you know, we have seen this with some of the bigger brands, that they'll have in-house UGC content creators, and or even if it's not in-house, they'll have affiliate programs. Like I want to mention um brands like Princess Polly. They're huge on, like sending or recruiting college students to their affiliate programs. So this is, I mean, like this is something that we have seen very commonly over the years. And what we're doing with khaa-lo nowadays is, like these brands that are starting young, these creators that are starting young, like this is a great way to um connect with each other because you are starting, like at the same platform, I want to say, and investing in content that is, again, very specific. Again, it helps when it's a review style. So, like, I honestly don't even think as much like it matters whether or not the creator is showing their face, but if they can clearly show the brand name, clearly state that, like, oh, this brand, like so and so tea, I use it for my morning routine because it helps me calm down my anxiety. Like, like just as specific as you can be, and very clear, and then high quality content, because I know that like with Chat GPT, like if you have high quality content, obviously like they're able to extract that information better. And like I know for SEO, we say SEO ranking, but like AI has something similar. So like, like the ranking is a lot easier. I think also like in terms of if you ask ChatGPT what are the best restaurants, um, it definitely or even like Claude or whoever you ask, what the best restaurants here are. It will parse through Google reviews and Yelp reviews and see like what the rankings are. And based on that, it will suggest like the most highest rankings.
Oh, okay, okay, that makes sense. So all our SEO knowledge is not necessarily lost. Like we can
It's
still
not. Yeah.
okay, that's awesome. Okay, so I was saying earlier that UGC content makes sense, but a founder might be like, I need to know the metrics. What metrics,
Mhm.
what should I be tracking that will say, yes, this is a successful campaign for me, or this is a successful strategy? Do you have some recommendations there on things that
Yes.
they can be tracking?
Yes. So again, I'm gonna go back to something I was talking about earlier, and it was like follows, comments, like they are great to an extent. I want to really say, like, I want to preface that, like it all really comes down to context. I'm not gonna say that like follower count, like we should completely dismiss that, or like comments, we should completely dismiss that. But the best way to measure your KPIs would be to see this particular UGC, like maybe give them a clear call to action. So like you have this video, like a review of your product from a creator in a UGC format video. And then in call to action, and a lot of people are already doing this, just say comment or DM to, purchase this or like whatever it is. And based on that, how many DMs are you getting? And then how many comments you're getting, and then how much of that converts into actual sales. Like that is one of the best ways to track that, and I think most platforms have that now. I think Instagram has like some sort of a structure for it. It doesn't exactly have that, but I know Shopify, like that's a most widely used, I want to say, e-commerce store across North America. They have, like KPI trackings. I mean, also Etsy, that's like, they have their own in-house systems. But again, see what the conversion to sales are from the UGC videos, and the way to measure them is by comments and DMs and so on.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So put a call to action and then see if
Yes,
it's working.
exactly.
um, and you can do it as creatively as you'd like,
Yeah.
especially because different platforms, people respond differently on different
Yes.
platforms. So if you say DM me, but it's on whatever platform where people don't usually DM, then they might not
Mhm.
respond. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So let's say a founder, a tech founder. I know we were using because it's so easy to use more of e-commerce as examples because we're also used to it. But let's say a tech founder is thinking about investing in UGC content and AI discoverability. What would you say are maybe 2 or 3 things that they can get started with in the next couple of months, like actionable things that they can start
Mhm.
doing?
I think everything that I've said for, CPG founders earlier, I think that is very much applicable to them as well. I know a lot of tech founders, like they tend to do something called EGC, which is employee generated content, because with CPG, like you have a product that is, like easily you can reach the customer for it, but for like software, like I mean, you can still do that, you can still do UGC. I think honestly, like any advice, like any recommendations that I suggested for CPG founders, like I think is applicable to tech founders as well.
Yes, for sure. I I find that the software companies who really embrace the work that CPG companies are doing are going so much further and connecting with buyers so much more quickly.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that you use those examples because when I hear those examples, I think, hmm, how can I
Yeah.
replicate that in my industry? Because a lot of my competitors are not doing that, but
Yeah,
it will engage with other human beings who are making those buying decisions. So that makes a
exactly.
lot of sense. So what
And
I'm yeah, oh go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add on to this, and something that you mentioned, like, because again, for CPG, like it is such a like consumer facing business, and like a lot of the times with tech, it can be like you're in your room building something, maybe with like 3, 4 other friends, you don't really have as much human interaction or maybe like human feedback. But something that I also did for khaa-lo was and I took inspiration from CPG founders or like CPG companies was starting a wait list or like having like some sort of a like pre-launch space where people could sign up for. And I mean most apps do that, like it is very common, but I think like not just having a wait list but also like engaging and like doing a little bit of a teaser and creating content similar to, like what I was talking about earlier, being specific, being clear, making high quality content, like that not only builds up the hype, but it also like help shaping your brand pre-launch. So, like I do think this is something that a lot of tech founders can take from the CPG founders.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we talked about a lot of things. I'm going to go back and take so many notes. Um, Now my question is for people who are like, I want to get started, but there's just so much information. What is like one thing you say, start with this, and then you can go on to the other things?
I would say start with first like posting your own videos and start with really interacting with your like you don't have to go from 1 to 100 straight away, right? Like any business that you're building, like you're building it from scratch, you're like building something out of nothing. Any founder, any business person knows this. So really like, start small, start with what you know. If you don't know where to start with UGC, like, do your some research, ask ChatGPT or Claude for some recommendations. That's like one of the ways to go. I mean, khaa-lo is also like a platform where very new creators who are just starting out, like we give them the platform and the opportunity to, and also the training to be able to, like start building what they want to build. But yeah, start small. And I don't want to be like vague, but just like I think when I say start small, I say that like start with what you know and then learn as you go along. Like don't be afraid to reach out to someone who you are. And again, I'm like thinking very much from like the CPG perspective, but again, like as a tech founder too, like if you think that like, oh, this person might be like really cool to test out like my product, reach out to them. Like don't be afraid to cold call or like cold DM, like obviously be respectful, but I think start by making human connections. A lot of the times people think that like in an AI world, like, like especially for founders, like, oh, AI is going to solve all my problems, but having a very strong community that you have authentic connections with, that is really the key to help you grow with AI.
I love it. You're trying to grow with AI, but you need to go back to the humans. In the
Yeah.
end, in the end, the people are still the most important. I really love
Yes.
that you said that. That's so good. Okay.
Yeah.
So people listening, watching this are like, I need to connect with you. What is the best way to either connect with you or learn more about khaa-lo or whatever? Like they just want to know more and they want to connect with
Yeah.
you.
So I'm on LinkedIn and our Instagram is khaa-lo app. I can give you my email and khaa-lo's website. So khaa-lo's website is khaa-lo.com. You can learn more about, what we're doing, join the community, be a part of these discussions, and also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you do want to try or like talk about more about AI.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Vaishnavi.
All right. Thank you so much, Asai, for having me here today.